Okay. Now. Okay. Now. Okay. Now. Yeah. Okay. Now. Yeah. Now let's give it a test. Now let's give it a test. Still got the echo. Sorry, I'm just working my way through some technical difficulties. Sorry, I'm just working my way. Why would I have an echo? Let's turn you down a little bit first of all. What would have a microphone that's hooked up that would be picking this up? Test. Oh, I wonder if it was just picking up the audio from my phone when I was testing. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I think we're good. I got a new mic. We're testing that out today. Before we dig into, this is going to be a quick one. We're going to be starting some podcasting a little bit more. We're going to do a series on the Raiders. I guess I could take my glasses off so you guys aren't getting that glare. The series on the Raiders, and we'll touch on the other factions later on. We're going to do that one week, and then we're going to flip the Blood Bowl the next week, and we're going to talk about the different teams and some of the different things that some of the teams can do. Take an in-depth look at them. Today we're going to start with the Old World Alliance, and we're going to probably only have about a half an hour for this, maybe 45 minutes, simply because I have to go to Indy today. We're going to be playing some Blood Bowl. There's a group of us getting together at my buddy's house, so I'm not going to be around. Let me test. Is this working? In both? Yeah, perfect. Awesome. So again, sorry for the long delay on getting this rolling. I had forgot I needed to set up my new mic. Few announcements before we dig into this. Again, the first one is going to be next week. We'll do a Raiders podcast. And the week after that, we are going to do a... Can I record this at the same time? Yes, I can. Well, that's clever. Let's see if it's still getting audio. Are we working? Are we working? Yeah. All right. Cool. So I can record my audio and upload it as an actual podcast. Sorry about that. Some of this stuff I'm still kind of working the kinks out of. So, first things first. Fallout, first week. Blood Bowl, next week. And we're just going to alternate from there. We're going to start doing stream games again. I know I've said that multiple times, but then obviously I decided I was done with 40K. And there's actually something I want to talk to everybody about with that. A group of us are looking to maybe hop back to 8th, 9th edition. And then honestly looking at maybe doing like a community rewrite of some of the codexes. And that's mostly because, generally speaking, a lot of the people that I play with on a regular basis, we just don't like 10th. And it's fine if you do. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you should or shouldn't. As anybody who's seen my channel knows, I'm not going to tell you what to play or how to play. Like, I'll tell you how to play just because I know the rules, but you know what I mean. So, that's what I wanted to make sure we addressed first. So we are going to do a community rewrite potentially. We're going to start play testing 8th and 9th. What we're going to do is we're going to take Psychic Awakening and 8th Ed codexes and play it with 9th rules again. Just like it was at the beginning of 9th. Because in our memory, that's been like the peak Warhammer 40K experience since 8th Ed has come out. So I think a lot of us are going to try to jump back into it, see how that feels, and then maybe work on doing some community-driven codex rewrites. So if you're one of those people who thinks that'd be really neat and want to be involved in it, hit me up in the comments. I may not respond to you right away because I've got dance recital with my daughter. My kids are on summer break. I'm actually installing a whole new floor in my hallway and the bedroom for the wife and I. So I've got a lot going on. Some VA appointments coming up, stuff like that. So I may not reach out to you right away, but I will reach out to you and we can kind of hash out what it is you think you can contribute and how we can all get together and kind of big brain something that is lore friendly, balanced, and still feels fun, right? Like that's the main thing, is we want this to be fun. So those were the announcements I wanted to make sure I made. Today, like I said, we're going to talk about Old World Alliance. Again, I apologize for being a little scatterbrained. Right as I was getting ready to launch this, I got a phone call. One of my friends is looking to adopt, and the agency called me as a referral, and it literally, I was about to hit the start button, and then they called, so I had to kind of shift gears. Why are we going to talk about Old World Alliance? Well, a lot of you know I'm going to Tampa to play the Bloodbowl Open. I'm going to be working Gen Con, and I'm going to see if I can play in the Bloodbowl event at Gen Con as well, just for some extra practice. And I'm leaning towards taking the Old World Alliance simply because again, if you know me, I like to play things that are kind of goofy, kind of off-kilter. And when I say goofy, I don't mean like Goblins Chainsaw goofy. I mean things that people will be dismissive of. Like, I thrive playing things that people are like, that's really bad. And then I'm like, no, it's not. So I was looking at either Imperial Nobility, which I don't know what the general consensus is on them. I know that a lot of the local competitive players poo-poo them like they're really bad. I love them. I think they're a lot of fun. And Old World Alliance. Again, locally, the general consensus is it's pretty bad. So before we dig into the team, I actually have I was going to do a whole video on them. That's what this is. We're going to kind of go through some of the main points on them. What is the Old World Alliance? It's a Tier 2 team, and the way I see Tier 2 teams is they fall into one of two categories. They're either fairly easy to play and fairly forgiving, but have a lower ceiling than Tier 1 teams. And what I mean by that is you can have, and again, if you're watching and not listening, this is going to be on the screen. Humans and orcs, base humans, base orcs to me, fall into that category. Because humans are generally pretty forgiving. They can kind of do whatever they want. You know, you want them to run, you can play a run team. You want them to bash, they can bash. They can pass. Where humans struggle is if they hit a matchup that's built the same way they are, they're going to struggle to keep pace. And what I mean by that is, if you set them up to be a pass team, and you've got your catchers and your thrower, you're going to be able to drop back, you're going to be able to throw, you're going to be able to get 2-3 touchdowns in a game. Excuse me. I'm looking to see if I've got a water here. I do. But where they're going to struggle to keep pace is if you hit another real dedicated pass team. You know, you hit that Wood Elf team that's just dropping bombs with their 2-up agility and able to bounce away and do all these things. And not that they can't keep pace, they're just not going to have the same offensive potential output. But overall, humans have good armor, good movement. They don't do anything really poorly. They just don't do anything exceptionally well. So they're pretty forgiving. Their players are generally inexpensive. But because their stat lines aren't amazing, like Lizardmen, for example, or because they can't hyper specialize the way a Skaven team could or a Dwarf team could, that's what I mean by a lower ceiling. You know, so they're higher floor, lower ceiling, and that doesn't mean they're not good. It doesn't mean they are good. It just means this is my opinion on how they work. So there's that category of Tier 2 teams. And orcs are generally just humans with slower movement and better armor. There's a little bit more nuance to it. Then the other side of Tier 2 and again, this is just an opinion, but these are teams that are really damn difficult to play and play well. But they require great positioning, but have a high enough armor and strength to not be tier 3. Because goblins, halflings, yes, they're very difficult to play. They do require good positioning, but they're also stunty with armor like 7 and 8 and strength 2, whereas Imperial Nobility, Old World Alliance, and really even Black Orcs are kind of tougher to play. You have to have that positioning, but they have a good enough armor and strength that they can still kind of hang with the other teams. You know, you're not going to just get kicked off the pitch on an average dice roll game against maybe like a bashing undead team or a bashing lizard man team. And clearly, if you're looking at the screen, I think Old World Alliance falls into that second category where they're very difficult to play and they require a lot of really good positioning and forethought. We're going to look at all the positions. We're going to just kind of briefly touch on them. We'll go over them in a little bit of detail, but then we're going to talk about, strengths and weaknesses, things of that nature. So on the Old World Alliance team, you can take up to 12 human linemen. They don't have any skills. They don't have shit. They're 50,000 each. And they're human linemen. If you've ever seen a human team, they're human linemen. I'll pull... Oh, not that. I will pull up the... There we go. So they move 6, strength 3, 3 up agility, 4 up pass, 9 up armor. And they get general skills with access to agility and strength as their secondaries. So again, they kind of hit that note of, I can do a little bit of anything. Movement 6 is solid. It's very, very average, actually. Strength 3, very average. Agility 3+ is pretty good, honestly. That's a 66% chance to jump out of somebody's tackle zone on a base roll. Passing 4 up. So again, the linemen aren't there to pass, but you have a 50-50 shot of just throwing a quick pass if that situation would arise. Armor 9's honestly pretty good, especially for something that cheap. And then your secondary skills, they get agility or strength, so you can kind of build them however you want to. You could give them tackle or grab or guard or all these different things. Tackle might be a general, I don't remember off the top of my head. But you get what I'm saying. But you could also give them dodge. If you wanted to level them all up and give them all dodge, that's a thing you could do. You can take one human thrower who has pass, sure hands, and animosity towards dwarves and halflings. And clearly, if you're looking, I can't spell because I forgot that. You can only take one human thrower. And it is a human thrower. He's got pass, he's got sure hands, so he's got the same ball handling skills that the base human thrower would have, and animosity towards dwarves and halflings. And if you don't know, that's effectively just, if you want to give the ball to a dwarf or a halfling, that thrower needs to make a 2-up check. Otherwise, you don't get to give it. And he's 80k. I'm pretty sure that's right in line with how much they cost on the human team. You can take one catcher, and it has catch, dodge, and animosity, just like the human thrower does. Catch is going to let you reroll catch attempts. Dodge, eliminates getting knocked down on the defender stumbles, I think it is, whatever it's called. We just call it the, I forget, I honestly don't even remember. Because, the one's a POW, and I forget what we call the other one. But again, it's the stumbles, it's the exclamation point. It ignores getting knocked down on the exclamation point. The catchers are strength 2, but they move 8, so they give you a nice mobility, which is something you're going to find this team does kind of lack if you lean hard into the dwarf side of things. And, they are 8-up armor, so that means they're going to be a little more susceptible to injury and get knocked out of the game. But movement 8 with agility in general, and then access to strength as a secondary. So you can get them block very reliably if you're in a league. If you're in a tournament, obviously you can just give it to them, depending on the rules for the tournament. But you can reliably give them block and have a blodger. If you're a goose, you can slap Dauntless on them and maybe like a turn them into kind of like a blitzer catcher. You know, that's an option. I don't know that it's the best one, but it's really funny. And that's what the catcher does. I mean, it's a catcher. If you've played Blood Bowl, you know what it is. You can take one dwarf blitzer, they have block, thick skull, and then loner 3-up. So anytime they want to use a team reroll, they have to make a loner check, and on a 3-up, they get to use the reroll. Anything else, and they lose the reroll. So, kind of a weird situation we're getting into, because they are effectively the same price as their dwarf counterparts on the dwarf team. Let's double check that. I think they are. And one of the positions is actually more expensive, but worse. 80K. 80K for a dwarf blitzer with loner. Arguably, they should probably be 5,000 or 10,000 cheaper just from having loner. But that's not the end of the world. You can take up to 2 dwarf blockers. This is such a weird one, because the base dwarf blockers have block, tackle, thick skull, right? And they're 70,000. These are 75. They have armbar, they have brawler, they have thick skull, and they have loner 3-up. So they don't come with block. They come with armbar, which is kind of like Mighty Blow for failed dodge tests. It's weird. It's pretty solid if you have tackle paired with it, which we will kind of dig into. Brawler isn't bad, but I think in this situation, I would rather have Wrestle than Brawler. Just because with Loner and Brawler, it's nice to have a single reroll, but at the same time, you know, it's one of those where Brawler can get you into trouble. You know, you can re-roll that both down and end up with a skull, for example. And you'll need to make sure that the dwarf blockers have assists so that they can kind of maximize and throw those 2-die blocks. Now, they do reduce some of the risk of a 1-die block from having Brawler, but it's one of those where your mileage is going to vary. I don't understand why they're more expensive, but they have skills that have less utility. You can take one dwarf runner. In my league, he got block immediately. He comes with sure hands, thick skull, loner 3+. Honestly, at 85K, I'd probably just take the human one in a tournament type setting. In a league, it doesn't matter if you want him or the human or both. You can get both eventually, depending on how long your league is. One human blitzer, fantastic. That they're one of the better players on the actual human roster, and big shock, movement 7, armor 9, block, in a 90,000 package. Pretty good. Now, they do have animosity also, but that's just kind of how the team's built. One Troll Slayer comes with block, dauntless, frenzy, loner, 3-up, thick skull. Troll Slayer's worth the money. I would take them every time. You can take up to 2 halfling hopefuls for dodge, stunty, right stuff. I mean, they're halflings, and then they're just cheap bodies. There's some strategy to using them, which we'll dig into, but that's not how I would want to play them, because I have to do everything my own way. It's just how I am. And then you can either take an ogre or a tree man, and they're just ogres or tree men. There's nothing crazy about them. I think the tree men are a little bit cheaper. I've only used the ogre so far. The tree men is 20,000 cheaper. And arguably because of how I've started playing the team, I think the tree men might be a better take for what I'm doing. But we'll talk about that in a minute. We're going to try and wrap this up in about 15 minutes or so. So again, this isn't going to be a super long one. We'll do another episode to talk about the team a bit more. Weaknesses. At the first glance, the thing that stands out to me the most is that they don't really have an identity, and they seem to have very limited build options. You're capped at 1 to 2 models for most of your positions, making it difficult to kind of build into a specific play style. And like I already said, the dwarf blockers on OWA are more expensive, but they trade block and tackle for armbar and brawler. And like I said, armbar is kind of weird, but you really want tackle to make armbar really worth. And I can't think of a situation in which I'd rather have armbar than either block or tackle. And then brawler, like I said, it's a good skill to have at the start, and like I said, it can make a single die block theoretically less risky, and you can definitely justify taking it in place of tackle as a starting skill, but not block. Like, I'm not saying that brawler is better than tackle. I'm just saying you could make a strong case for it out of the gate being at least on par with, especially given that they have loner. Having access to some sort of reroll is good. Loner on pretty much every non-human, non-halfling model means that not a lot of rerolls to go around. Your humans are the only ones that are going to reroll reliably. Everything else is going to require a 3-up check or a 4-up check. They don't have a ton of actual weaknesses as a team, but those weaknesses are glaring enough that it makes them a very difficult team to kind of wrap your head around. That lack of real strong identity is the biggest, I don't know if it's a weakness, but that's the biggest thing that sticks out to me the most. When I played them in the league, it took a lot of games. Like, I think I was 4 games into the league and then built a tournament build for them and then took them to a tournament. And the tournament, we're talking games 5, 6, and 7, plus games I had played as exhibitions. But it was games 5, 6, and 7 where I really started to kind of figure out how to get them to kind of click and work. They do have strengths. It's not all downside. Now, I think they have more strengths than weaknesses, but their strengths aren't great enough to necessarily overshadow the weaknesses. The most obvious of their strengths is that they can one-turn touchdown. And I think it's a boring gimmick. That's like the halfling goblin shtick. And if you want to use it by all means. Because it is a way to reliably get a touchdown when you need it. Obviously some things have to go your way with dice, but generally speaking, if you can roll a 3 or higher, it can't be stopped. You've got the treemen who can lob halflings, etc. So you can reliably do that one-turn touchdown if you want to. The downside to that is if you lean into that gimmick and your halflings get taken out of the game, you've now just hampered your ability to score. It's a great tool to have in the toolbox. I just don't think, for me personally and how I play, it's not one I want to rely on. I played against a halfling team, and obviously, that was their shtick. And it was literally, I'm going to one-turn touchdown. I'm not going to roll lower than a 3, and that's exactly how the game went. And then after that, I would get the ball, and I would just have these slow grinding drives in which I pummeled his players. Got my score. The final score on the game was 4-3. I won. And it really just came down to the fact that, he couldn't roll lower than a 3, so he just got touchdown after touchdown. But then when I got the ball, he couldn't stop me. Obviously, they're not going to have the same weaknesses as a halfling team because there's only 1 or 2 halflings. But overall, I just think it's something you keep in your back pocket in case you need it. But don't necessarily go into it thinking that's your primary source of touchdowns. The whole team basically has 9-up armor outside of halflings and catchers. Dwarves are all 10, except for the Slayer and the Runner, who are also 9. So you have a really solid, durable team compared to, say, Amazons even, who are all armor 8. So you have some durability that even some of the tier 1 teams are just not going to have. And even with a limit of 1, you have some great positionals. Human blitzers are fantastic. I'm not going to touch on them again. I already did, but they are a great, durable, mobile unit that you can kind of move around. You give them tackle, and they can be ball hunters. You give them strip ball, for example. There's a lot of things you can do with a blitzer with a movement of 7 to increase their utility. Even with the inflated cost and inferior skills, dwarf blockers, I think, are still worth it with the 10 plus armor. 10 plus and thick skull gives you something that can anchor the line, and they can be very durable and hard to get out of the game. And the one dedicated catcher, human catchers are solid. And 8 movement with dodge and catch, really, really good position. Yes, you only get one, but if you take it, you just make sure you use it well. And then you have access to 2 different players that have sure hands, and they do things a little bit differently, and it allows you to lean into a little bit different style of game. And as I said before, I just think Slayers are the bee's knees. That is out of the box, that's probably the best position on this team. Yes, you only get one. Now, other positions will outshine them once they start getting skills, but out of the box, I think that's the best position on this team. Interestingly, one of their weaknesses is also one of their strengths. Because you don't have the ability to reliably reroll for a lot of your team if you take these dwarf players, you're not going to reroll a lot. Which means you don't need a lot of rerolls. Which means that's money you can funnel into having more players. If you start... Honestly, you could get away with 1 to 2 rerolls with this team, because the only things that are going to really use them are the humans. You may hit a situation where you want to risk that loner because it's like, oh, if I get this 3-up, I get a touchdown type of thing. But generally speaking, your rerolls are going to be used for your humans. And passers have sure hands, so they already get a reroll to pick up. Passers have pass, so they already get a reroll to throw the ball. Catchers have catch, so they get a reroll to catch the ball. Catchers have dodge, so they get a reroll to dodge. So your outside of linemen, like your 2 main human positionals, already have built-in rerolls, and then your dwarf runner also already has a built-in reroll. So ultimately, you don't necessarily need more than 1 or 2 team rerolls in order to get this team to kind of work. And like I said before, I just think there's a lot of small strengths that build into a pretty solid team once you understand them. It just feels like the team itself was kind of a disjointed afterthought. One of the big wigs at GW was just like, throw this shit in a box and ship it, and we'll write those rules later. That's kind of how it feels. Let's see. I've got... I'm just thinking. We're going to maybe dig into this a little bit, and then we'll talk about builds in the next episode. Like I said, I've only played with 1 ogre. The tree man, I think, given, like I said, what I've been doing, is a better cost and a better take. Saving 20,000, I don't necessarily care if the tree man takes root, because of the way I've kind of found them to be able to work. I will break down my tournament roster actually next episode, but I'll let you know I took 2 dwarf blockers for the tournament, and I gave them both stand firm. And my thinking behind it was I'm going to plant them right up front. I don't care what they do. I'm just going to use them to tie you up. If you've got dodge or you're an elf team, oh well. That's just the way it is. But if I hit... Because I did end up playing an Amazon team at the tournament, but I also hit Korn. And it just, kneecapped their ability to reposition things because they couldn't push me. So they still got their frenzy blocks, right? But they couldn't push me. So they just sat there, and I just sat there, and we all just sat there like a bunch of idiots. So I think the tree man also having stand firm. And then what I did with the ogre is I gave him guard. And I put the ogre in the middle, the blockers on either side. But I think giving the tree man stand firm, he has it, and then giving him guard, I now have a strength 4 anchor because of guard, with armor 10, thick skull, if you do happen to fail a dodge check to get away from them, I get like a Mighty Blow-esque modifier to the armor roll. So it's one of those, like, I went into that tournament and I was like, okay, what I'm doing in the league is not working. But what I was doing was trying to hit a bunch of different notes at once. And what I decided for the league or for the tournament was I'm just gonna ground and pound. I'm gonna kind of play them like a bashing team that actually just doesn't bash. So it was a lot of just making sure my screens were good and then having that high armor anchor right in the middle of the board that could really help dictate the flow of traffic. My blitzer had tackle, so he was able to go smack a ball carrier because, again, a lot of times, like I knew I was going to hit at least one Amazon team, so I needed something with tackle. And really, if you go to a tournament, you need to make sure you have at least one model with tackle. It does not matter. Like, it's just such a good, versatile skill that something needs it. That being said, like I said, next time we're going to dig into that tournament roster because I did end up winning the tournament. And we'll talk about what I did like about it and what I think I would probably change. And we're going to probably do some deep dives into this team and talk about, like, how we can make them work a little bit better. So, hope you enjoyed this. Sorry it's a little fast. Sorry it's a little quick. Sorry that the beginning of it was a little disjointed. Just one of those mornings where every time I'd go to sit down, man, something would come up. So, again, appreciate you guys all watching. We'll see you in 2 weeks for Blood Bowl.